my feet. Wanna drink my wine. Wanna do my feet. Wanna drink my wine. Wanna do my feet.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Alpha Freeman, and welcome to the Next Generation Business Talk. It's a really great honor and a privilege to have a wonderful guest with me here today. Today's topic is going to go more in regards to West Africa, and this is based in the small nation of Sierra Leone. My guest today is a Sierra Leonean, renowned, well-educated, patriotic Sierra Leonean who has been in the country for many years and has done a lot of industrial revolution. And currently, he wants to speak about his new plan and project that's currently going on in the nation as we speak. No need no further introductory. Mr. Dr. Peter Turay, if you can please introduce yourself, sir, it would be a great privilege and honor.
Right. Thank you so much, Alpha, for having me on your program today. It's a privilege which I do appreciate so much. And I want to see us moving forward with this in the future. I also hope that some of my colleagues in the same trade and on the same quest will join me later on in advancing the interest of not just your program, but our country's interest as well as our business interest. So thank you so much for having me here. My name is Dr. Peter Turay, and I'm currently an applied science lecturer at Shooters Hill College here in London. And I have held various teaching positions, but I do have a company which I launched here in the UK, and we have a subsidiary company in Sierra Leone. That company is called Agrienviron. So the group here is the Agrienviron Group in the UK, registered in England and Wales, and in Sierra Leone, it is registered as the Agrienviron Company.
That's awesome. And I think it's a really cool honor and a privilege to have you on board. Not too lately, we've heard a lot of things going on in Sierra Leone. Can you please touch base to my audience member and give us a quick perception regarding what this nation stands for, where it's located, in regards to what's currently going on, what impact it has in regards to the global stage as we speak?
Right, so Sierra Leone is located in West Africa. It's part of sub-Saharan Africa, and it's on the west coast of the African continent, sharing borders with Liberia in the southeast, Guinea in the north and northwest, as well as northeast, and then the Atlantic Ocean in the west. Right. So these are the borders of Sierra Leone, and I'm sure you could easily locate it on any globe or any map, right? It is a tropical country, and one of the assets of that nation is agriculture, which most governments have always used or featured as the engine for development. And I believe it is still that engine. So yes, as an agriculturist myself, trained and qualified with a doctorate degree in agronomy, I have had the privilege to act as an advisor to the government of Sierra Leone. And this was in the year 2009 and up till 2012, when I also had the privilege to act as a honorary advisor to the CFRN, which is the Coalition for Rainforest Nations. Right, so in 2009, I had the privilege to represent Sierra Leone in at the level of the UNFCCC on climate change and climate talks. And I was inspired by some of the decisions made in COP16 on deforestation as one of the main tenets through which climate change could be addressed. Now, the vision then was to actually establish this particular policy in Sierra Leone, take advantage of it, implement a program that will definitely bring a lot of dividends to the nation, as well as on the climate change front, because the control or reduction of emissions is vital, and we are still on it. So that opportunity lies with most forest nations, lies with other nations as well that are still trying to, that are currently trying to reforest and afforest their lands.
Right. So I do get the idea that the nation itself is looking for a new sense of hope and regarding moving forward. But nevertheless, there has been some stagnant deficit over the course of the time period that has allowed certain things not to move forward. But nevertheless, I do see that based upon what you're saying here, that there are certain key components that can help strengthen the core of the country as we speak. And some of those things are regarding agricultural growth and development. Your
Yes,
key sector that you played over the years have managed to um, play a big part in the country, but nevertheless, there hasn't been any, stagnant growth over the years. And I do understand that the country currently is going through a lot as a whole. For the Sierra Leoneans that are currently listening, or for the people who are currently listening all around the world, what are some key components you want them to understand regarding your position and where you stood in the past, as far as to where you see the country going in the future as we speak?
right. So food is a uh, very important item we should be thinking about, because without food, there won't be any food security.
Right,
Without adequate supply of food, we would have food insecurity, which could be a very key problem in most developing countries. And Sierra Leone is not excluded from that. So therefore, with all the challenges of biodiversity loss, the challenges of climate change, the challenges of food production, the challenges of water supply, and so on and so forth, I could name a lot.
mhm,
There is an urgent need for us to be able to balance all of these challenges and ensure that our environment as well as our economies are managed sustainably. And that
right,
is where we come in as a company, because that is one of our key areas of interest. Sierra Leone as a nation has no major agent on environmental management. Of course, we do have EPA, but EPA, which is the Environmental Protection Agency, is a government agency with its own limitations as well.
right,
As regards conservation per se, we do not have any agency or any organization that is keen or that is determined or that has a deliberation to delegate that aspect. So therefore, Agrienviron, our company, has taken upon itself this responsibility to ensure that we embark on conservation.
mhm,
And in conservation here, we're going to be looking at forestry, we're going to
right,
be looking at the overall biodiversity of the country, and we're going to be looking at agricultural production. So we have decided to hinge our work on conservation agriculture, taking into consideration climate smart agriculture as well, then management of our forest reserves, which which you all know is vital, not just for food production, but for the management, not just for food production, but for the challenges posed upon us by climate change. Forests play a very important role. And therefore, we should be able to balance all of those. But then one key thing about the problem we're facing is that agriculture itself is a driver of deforestation.
right.
So how do we balance that? How we balance that is where Agrienviron has seen for itself a business interest.
Correct. Just to piggyback here for a quick second, before we touch base on your company, Agrienviron, and I think it's a very key, important gesture. If you could please touch base in regarding your history and what got you into this field. Take us back to the days, when you started off as a student, into lecturing days, because I know some people are curious to know, okay, how you started, what got you into this? What was your big why, in regards to being a professor in the UK, and just a little small history here, just to give us a quick idea regarding, how we're moving forward here.
So Agrienviron has a very, very humble beginning, and an interesting one for that matter, right? This company has its origins from a postdoc work that I did at King's College under the supervision of the late Professor Emeritus David Oakley Hall. David Hall was a biologist And he was very renowned in the area of CO2 pollution, as we named it in those days, right? And one of his key areas was carbon fluxes, global carbon fluxes. So as a result of my expertise in soil science, I got involved in David's program. I was introduced to him by another professor from Exeter University who was then working with me on agroforestry matters. And that was the late Professor Jonathan Anderson, Joe Anderson, we used to call him, from Exeter University. He introduced me to David Hall, and I started working with David Hall on his global carbon fluxes. I was given a brief on sub-Saharan Africa, and I managed somehow to come up with a formula. I was able to devise a formula for organic soil carbon calculation using algorithms, which I derived, yes. So that was my contribution in David's work. But during the course of that, Agrienviron was born. And in fact, the name itself, Agrienviron, came out of a discussion we were having in David's office. And then I came up with this word. I said, David, given the fact that we're looking at agriculture as a driver of CO2 pollution, why don't we come up with an agency that will actually seek to curb it, right, and manage environment effectively? Bear in mind, the unit in which we were working had a very, very long name. Yes, it was the Unity of Biosphere Sciences.
Wow.
Yes, that was David's unit. And then later on, it was then changed to environmental pollution of CO2, right? Then our focus was carbon dioxide and the missing carbon, which was one of our key areas, right? So I then came up with this one that, David, I think I should be calling my company Agrienviron. And David straight away endorsed that. He said, yes, that's the name we were looking for. So that was how this name came about, Agrienviron, from agriculture and the environment. How these two can be managed to ensure that we produce sustainably and at the same time curb down the negative aspects or effects of carbon dioxide on us, which is, of course, as you all know, is climate change. So that was how the name came up, very interestingly, right? Yes. Having said that, and this was in 1994, he then advised me to register as a company. So I said to him, no, I don't think I'll be able to do that as a company at this stage, but I'll register with the British Institute of Consultants as a sole trader initially, which I did. But then the consultancy then saw me as, and they saw me actually as an outlier because my interests were not in line with them. And definitely that forced me to then register as a company, which we did in 1995. So that was the first registration of Agrienviron as a limited liability company in King's College, working with David Orr, right? We then proceeded from there. Then I was able to introduce the same company in Sierra Leone as well, with the University of Sierra Leone, Njala University College, right, through the late Professor Harry Turay, who coincidentally happened to be my cousin as well. So we had a branch in Freetown, right? And we continued until later on. When the war broke out, we had an interregnum. The civil war in Sierra Leone broke out, and we had an interregnum there, right? We then again came back after the interregnum. We came back and decided this time to register not just as Agrienviron, but as a company, the name itself, Agrienviron Company. Then here in the UK, we changed from Agrienviron to the Agrienviron Group, right? And since then, I've been operating. So it's been a very, very it's been an uphill task, but we're still standing.
That's amazing.
Yes.
It's pretty cool just to see in regards to how the company Agrienviron has managed to, build itself over the years and gain a reputation as it currently has. I'm sure there's a lot of ups and hurdles, I know, in being able to establish this company as a whole. You stated earlier that the company started back in 1994.
Yes.
What got you into actually being able to bring the company down to Sierra Leone and establish it and launching it now as we speak in 2023? Over the years, I'm sure that's about more than 28 years now per se.
Yes.
We're really into the forefront and say, okay, listen, I want to go down to Sierra Leone and I want to make this happen now.
So in August last year, I'm now fast forwarding, in August last year to 2022, we launched one of our major campaigns again and decided that this time, instead of us simply producing or providing consultancy, we'll go into production. So as a result, we acquired land. And as I speak to you, we've got land to the size of almost 200 acres, if not more, right, of land. Right, so we've got 15 acres of that in a place called Nkoya, a place called Garahun, and the rest in a place called Masimra. Again, it's in Nkoya. This is rural western area of Sierra Leone.
Okay.
So these are that's the area in which we have the majority of our land. And this time we intend to go into agricultural production. This was with effect from last August 2022. And we're slightly behind schedule because of a few other issues, challenges, but we're getting there, right? So we intend to use the site in Garahun, which is a 15-acre land. We intend to use that to launch Sierra Leone's first emissions reduction program. So we shall be looking at the production of cassava so as to be able to meet with the needs of food security, and at the same time to use the waste produced by cassava to provide or to produce gas, which we can then supply into the national grid for electrical production. This is the concept.
Nice. Take me back for a quick second here to try to understand how this concept works as a whole. Because based upon my understanding here, I see that you'll be utilizing cassava waste as a source of energy, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
That's right, yes. So the waste will generate gas, which is going to be biological gas or biogas.
Okay.
That biogas that we shall harness and then use it to supply into the national grid.
And what kind of energy?
Electricity.
Electrical energy. What kind of energy would it be producing?
It's going to be clean energy.
All right.
It's going to be clean energy, and the emissions that we shall be reducing will then be sold in the emissions market to generate more income for the company as well as for the nation.
Right. In regards to the income that's being generated, how does that benefit the country in the long run in regards to the people itself?
Well, first and foremost, there will be production, there will be provision of jobs.
Okay.
That's one. Two, the income that will be generated, since the business is private, definitely will then have to pay taxes on its profits, and that those taxes will go into the national revenue, which can then be used for various developmental issues in the country.
Nice. And with that being stated, how do you manage to actually guarantee the fact that there will be job security for the people and also sustainable growth for this company as a whole?
Right. Well, as far as the guarantee is concerned, that I cannot vouch for at this stage. One thing that I can for sure tell you is that jobs are concerned. There are obviously, I can guarantee and vouch that there's going to be plenty of jobs, because we need workers to work in our fields. That's the first place to start from. Without those workers, we won't be able to produce the crop that we need, because the crop would serve as the source of the energy itself.
Right.
Then would need to add value to that. Value addition would also need workers. So that's another area for jobs. Then, of course, the supply of the product would also need workers into other value chains. So yes, there is ample guarantee for that, you see. Without them, this notion, without them, this concept will not come into fruition.
I see. And the thing that I'm actually trying to understand here in regards to this whole project as a whole, because you have to understand something about the nation as a whole currently as we speak. There's not a lot of export in regards to what's happening, you know. And if there's something that's being sold outside, you know, 9 times out of 10, a lot of time the people itself don't see the benefit in regards to how it's benefit as a whole. Now, as a new company, what difference or what change do you want to make in regarding making a voice for the country as a whole? Because a lot of things are being exported and none is being weighted or being stayed back home for the people to benefit as a whole.
Well, the voice I would like for us to have is for us to be seen as a nation that is actually contributing to sustainable production and sustainable management of our natural resources.
Right.
So in those days, let's say about 10, 15 years back, when these issues started, there was a vision for green investments to develop. And we're almost getting there now globally. But then Sierra Leone has no position in that. Now, that's a great concern for me. In 2009, when I attended the COP16 in Copenhagen, and we signed the Copenhagen Accord, I was greatly inspired to drive home climate changes or climate change issues, addressing them from a centralized point of view, right, downwards to the local people, right. Honestly speaking, there hasn't been much progress in that regard, but we shouldn't give up the fight at all. And that's one of the reasons why we decided on the 31st of May this year to launch the campaign for the engagement of the people and the government of Sierra Leone on the adoption and implementation of REDD+.
Absolutely.
That's right.
I want to get something clear for my audience member to understand here, because I'm also thinking in regards to long-term wise, or just short-term gain for long-term loss, or long-term gain for short-term loss. Where do you guys stand in regards to that? You know, because a lot of companies tend to come in and start off a great idea, but then again, things go left. Nevertheless, the people left the ones suffering, having to scramble and having to figure out what's next for us. You know, is this a government affiliated company, or is it a self-privatized company that can be sustainable?
I like that. That's a very good question you just asked. And that's the reason why we're launching this campaign. Now, the campaign is not just going to be for a few days. This campaign is going to last for years, if not more. Right.
How do you plan on maintaining that?
I beg your pardon?
How do you plan on maintaining the following?
So we have already started using our own resources. We've started, but at a point we shall need support, not just from the government, but also from Sierra Leone's international development partners. And that's where the thrust lies, actually, for the success of the program, given the economy of Sierra Leone. So we want them to see us now as stakeholders from within, stakeholders who are actually starting a very important program that should have started, or that should have been taken on board by the government itself, but they haven't done so. And therefore, we would like them to stand with us to try and drive this course home and establish the program as well as reap the benefits. There is a very detailed strategy which I published, and I would like you to showcase that as well. That strategy is online, and it's won a semi-finalist position with the Climate Collab of MIT, right, in 2019, August. I would be very grateful if you could showcase that. because it's not good for us to have something that is revered amongst my peers, something that is looked upon as worth the while, when in effect, those people for whom it was developed are not benefiting from it. We have nations in Africa that started this same work with us, who are now earning hundreds and hundreds of millions of US dollars, having developed their programs. It is all started from one point, the point of adopting it, the point of people understanding it. I have realized over the years that even those in government do not understand this.
Okay.
Let alone to mention the local people. So therefore, we've decided to launch this campaign to try and raise awareness of this particular product and how it can benefit us all.
Absolutely. I want to understand something here quickly, and that comes from, other nations, us being the front, Sierra Leone being the front back in the, I'm not sure what year that you mentioned earlier, being the front in agriculture, because I remember you mentioned something earlier about the country being the front of agricultural growth and development.
Yes, that was in the 60s, during the days of yes, in the 60s, when we still had colonial masters. It was the UK, in fact, that was the United Kingdom or Great Britain, that was our colonial master. And in those days, we used to produce rice and other products which were being exported. So we were reckoned with as good agricultural producers. But that has all gone down the drain over the years. Right. So we need to regain that position again, and the potential is still there.
Absolutely. And that brings me to my next point regarding us having to lose that and having to regain and use agriculture sustainable growth as a whole. And my question then becomes, what do we do, or what does your company currently doing to maintain the following? And regarding maintaining the growth of agriculture and producing the value revenue that's needed for the country as a whole, and also having a sustainable growth with us having to depend upon other nations to gain our resources, and we can produce it ourselves.
Well, to be honest with you, in 2009, when I was appointed as technical advisor to the government of Sierra Leone, I believe we did that. We started that. The first thing we did was an overhaul of the whole agricultural sector, and we did that successfully. Then, having overhauled the sector, we then decided to put in place a set of programs, right? So we started with the commercialization of agricultural production. We tried to instill a sense of business-likeness in the minds of farmers, and we set up, together with the FAO, we were able to set up schools for farmers, right? And then, of course, schools for farmers on climate change as well. All of these incentives were there. We also set up programs under the same commercialization unit. We set up business units, making farmers to come together to establish a business. And I mean, bankable businesses for that matter. So they had a bank account, they were known by banks, and that was a channel through which funding was provided for them and all that stuff. And we also made them to start developing their products as a brand. So branding was also introduced. Unfortunately, we were not able to sustain that as a result of regime changes and other issues such as the Ebola and others that actually hit the economy. Yes. So over the years, I believe that we might have already learned how to try and manage ourselves to be able to sustain or to withstand some of these challenges or some of these forces, which are market forces.
All right. And that's actually quite valid. And the second part to that question that I want to touch base in, yes, during the 60s, we were under colonial masters at the time being, but what has gotten us to lose control of ourselves, meaning not being able to produce the right resources that can benefit the country as a whole. And now is the time in which we want to start that. How can we actually get back to the top? And many years has been lost. And
yes, of course. Many years has been lost. In fact, there's another sector, another unit which we introduced that I forgot to mention. We actually introduced the mechanization, right? So a shift from self subsistence farming to intensive farming, and there was goodwill internationally, most especially from India. We got machines, and we were able to mechanize agricultural production. We had yields. And as a result, in fact, of that particular incentive and the others as well, not to mention the increase of the budget, very important one. It was Agrienviron that advised the government of Sierra Leone to increase the budget of agriculture to above, a minimum of 6% of GDP. And thankfully, we had someone who did that very well. And that individual is today standing as, is running as one of the presidents of Sierra Leone, and that's Dr. Winston Samura Kamara, right? So he took up the advice that I gave, and he increased the budget to almost 12% twice.
Right.
And as a result, the president, as a result of what we did with that budget, the president of Sierra Leone, who was then Anis Kuruma, and the Minister of Agriculture was then Dr. Sam Sise, were both made ministers and presidents of agriculture in Africa by NEPAD. All right. So yes, we've done it before, and I believe we can do it again.
The question then becomes, how do we maintain it?
Well, how do we maintain it? That's a big question. We maintain it with discipline in the first instance. We maintain it with actually recognizing or actually crying down mediocrity. We maintain it by being conscious of the fact that we're living in a diversified society. And as such, we should recognize the talents of each and every individual, each and every Sierra Leonean, regardless of their background, regardless of their social status, regardless of their tribes, which is a key issue. That's how we maintain it.
So to understand this, I think what you're saying here is the best way to maintain the sustainable growth in agriculture is putting aside the tribalism, putting aside.
Yes, it's not just in agriculture alone, it's the entire economy and the business of the nation.
So then that brings me to my next point, because currently the country has a lot to offer, but then again, it's not being shown in the international stage, and I think the people itself don't think the country has its potential of growth. Now with Agrienviron being a company that's sustained on agriculture and growth as a whole, what voice can you speak for the people? What voice can you make for the change of Sierra Leone? Because the people are tired of the same old campaigns regarding guaranteed and yet promises are not being fulfilled.
Right. So it is our intention to foster an atmosphere that actually grants Sierra Leoneans, especially the layman, voice in affairs of the state and the nation. That is not going to be easy, but the campaign which we have just launched is a starting point. It's a very good starting point for us to harness them, as well as usher them into a forum that grants them a sense of ownership of their natural resources in the first place. And once that is achieved, then they'll be able to do other things which would actually lead to the other areas of our interest, right? As regards the type of voice we're seeking to establish, that is still too early to tell. We've first got to listen to them. We tell them, we introduce them, we introduce the idea to them, and then we listen to them to know exactly what their needs will be as regards this new concept that we're introducing. Then
right.
Based on that, we'll then be able to work out a way forward.
Right, so based upon what you're saying here is understanding the people's needs and their wants.
Exactly. So.
Being in love with their problems.
Yes. The second point I would like to add here is the fact that if we make it known to them that this particular concept that we're introducing or that we are trying to sell to them. There is something actually for them to benefit, or there's something for them to, there's something in it for them. In fact, definitely they would, without hesitation, embrace it and be ready to run along with us with it.
Nice. I do want to understand something in regards to, I want to touch base on the vision
Yes.
of the company as a whole. You know, what is the vision for the company? What is the vision for the country? What is the vision for the people?
Right. The vision of Agrienviron is sustainable development. So what we have currently, we must be able to utilize as well as maintain it in a better position or in a better state for our posterity. That's the main vision. The mission is actually to bridge the gap between production and technological advancement and be able to introduce that at the grassroots level. That's our mission.
And for the people?
Of course, grassroots are the people.
For the people.
Yes.
And the nation all fall into the whole grassroots as a whole.
Yes, please.
All right, but nevertheless, it's something that I see has a great potential for the country as a whole. Now the question then becomes the maintenance of growth. Now, I did some research in Agrienviron and in regarding touch base on the forestry sector of Sierra Leone and then the development sectors of Sierra Leone, and also some of the key components like Bubana hydroelectric dam that has been on stagnant growth as a whole.
Yep.
Now, we want to understand something here regarding where you stand as a company. You know, as an executive director of a company, where do you stand regarding seeing this project? You know, what project do you want to engage in as far as to the people of Sierra Leone and the benefits for the GDP and also the sustainable growth?
Great. Well, you remember I told you that the particular campaign that we running currently was inspired. It was actually inspired by a decision from the UNFCCC on climate change.
Absolutely.
Agrienviron wishes to see or sees itself as a main player in this area. That's how we see ourselves. And that's where we intend to be. It's been a very slow development, but we haven't given up and we are learning in the process. So we are still in the learning curve. And so long as we remain in that learning curve, we're not going to miss our point and our targets.
That's absolutely true. So what are some of the incentives or the key stakeholders who are currently that you guys are involved with?
Right. So well, at present, we do have staff that we have employed in Sierra Leone. We are also seeking to establish stakehold in other West African countries. We are in the process of doing so in Liberia, where we've been before, and we're still in dialogue with some of our partners over there. Right, so what do we use as an incentive for them? Well, the monument isn't that great at the moment, but we have it as part of our vision for those workers who have stayed with us or who started with us and are still with us to be made, to be given shareholders as well. So that's one key incentive, I believe, that would actually help us grow, because when you make the workers to feel that they also own the business,
right,
and they have a stakeholder in it, which is legally legitimized, definitely they will lose they wouldn't lose interest or in pushing the programs forward.
absolutely. Based upon your history, and I do think that's a really key component to touch base on. And based upon your history, being involved in the government of Sierra Leone, what is it currently as we speak in the year of 2023 that the nation itself is lacking? And how can your company contribute to the success and growth of the nation as a whole, and making sure that they don't fall victim to the constant corruption or even government takeovers?
Well, we have these two issues battling against each other, the economy and the environment, which is first. It's the kind of the chicken and the egg situation.
Mm-hmm.
We hold that the environment is superior to the economy, which is a notion that is not accepted by most of the mainstream businesses. They see the economy as being paramount. But let me tell you one thing, should anything happen to the environment, then everything else will collapse.
Right.
So that assures us of our own position that environment is superior. That's what we intend to drive through to ensure that it is understood, to keep us going and to keep us producing sustainably.
Mm-hmm. So now we see that Agrienviron is the face of agriculture in Sierra Leone. Am I mistaken or not?
Well, I can't say it is the face of agriculture in Sierra Leone, but we intend to make it to become key players in the production.
Are there already, sorry to cut you off there, sir. Are there already companies that are currently doing the same thing as you speak in Sierra Leone?
Not precisely as we intend to do things, but there are agricultural companies as well, but not in sustainable development at all.
Right.
Our focus is sustainability, and that is where we intend to be, and we intend to be pioneers in that area.
Absolutely. And by being the first of the first, you know, what are some key foundations you want to make sure it stands as a grassroots, you know, principle for the nation as a whole?
Well, the key foundation is what we've just started. We've just developed, and we are seeking to sell now to the people of Sierra Leone. That's our forest reserves and our biodiversity, which are major assets nationally and internationally.
Right. Now, with that being stated, with the forestry, I do understand a lot of these. How does that play a role in regards to environmental changes? You know, does it damage the ecology?
No, it doesn't. In fact, in retrospect, it actually promotes. It advances, and it brings in rewards.
How so?
Both in terms of finances as well as aesthetic values. We are going to advance ecosystem services, and we will generate revenues from them as well.
Right.
So by ecosystem services here, I mean supply of water, the maintenance of leisure centers, of aesthetic values, the conduction of transport systems, water transport systems, and tourist centers, ecotourism.
These are assets you plan on selling and exporting, or is this assets?
Yes, of course. We plan to sell them as well as export them by inviting people to come in and see how beautiful our nation is.
And how do you maintain the beauty of a nation if it's being sold based upon its natural resources?
Well, we will maintain that by investments, not just by ourselves, but also by third parties. Investment institutions will come in along with us. And that is what we're seeking to do with this campaign in particular.
But nevertheless, with that being stated, at some point, the people have to play a role in this, correct?
Of course, without people, we are not going to do anything whatsoever without the involvement of people, you see. So yes, people are going to be playing a big role in this. And
so what message do you have for the people to seek and gain their trust in regarding being the executive director of Agrienviron?
So the message we have for people is that here is the products that we have, and we believe that it's a product for all and sundry. We also believe that no one lives without oxygen, do we? And no one can thrive without clean environment. So the product we have is one that actually sustains our environment, one that ensures we have a clean environment, one that actually improves our well-being, not just physically, but also economically. Because when we make offsets, when emissions which are sequestered in the forest stocks continuously, which is what we're going to be maintaining, and that's the plus side of it, continuously, are sold in global carbon markets, that revenue comes back to the nation and it goes to supply, it goes to feed into various sectors of development, such as health, education, and so on and so forth. Yes, so these are some of the benefits we have in stock.
I see that. And I also want to understand something here as a key point, because one thing we tend to understand, obviously, in business, the whole key point is to gain profit margin. But nevertheless, if the profit itself is going to damage some certain routes, how do you as a company, if you focus on export and want to maintain the beauty of this nation in the forestry sector and making sure that the people that you're profiting or the people that are buying it also understand the value of the nature?
I just gave you an insight into the business model of Agrienviron a short while ago by telling you that we intend to make our workers as stakeholders as well in the business.
All right.
And I'm not yet through. So that's one area. And currently, Agrienviron is registered as a limited liability company, right, for profit making. Well, we do not intend to go down that road in the future. We intend to make it a civil organization that would not be making profits for itself, but an organization that will be plowing back into the communities that we serve, the revenues or the benefits that we actually generate, the profits that we actually generate from our business.
And that's a key standpoint in which you want to stand as an executive there.
Yes, exactly. So
absolutely. And I do understand that, this is an ongoing company that's recently looking to change the face of sustainable growth and development in agriculture. But nevertheless, what message do you have in regards to the current campaign that you're currently holding, regarding not only gaining the trust of the people, the stakeholder, but also.
Right. So the message that I have right now is this: climate change is a main threat, not to any particular nation, but to the world at large, the entire globe. So it's global. And we all know how serious this threat is, to the point of some of us now agreeing that it's becoming existential. And if that is the case, then we've all got to collectively try and do something about it. And this program which we are campaigning about now is one that provides a solution. It's a nature-based solution, one without any side effects at all. There are other forms of technologies that could sequester carbon dioxide, which is the main culprit, but this one does so naturally. Yet still, it has been very hard to sell in Sierra Leone. Nations such as Ghana, Gabon, Madagascar, to name a few, have already established themselves in this business, and they are making good profits out of it, which is benefiting their economies. So why not us as well, Sierra Leone? The problem we have had, from my experience, is the fact that our governments, I wouldn't blame our people, because it also tells that we haven't done our jobs well properly as they should have been done, or as this job should have been done to the nation. That is oneself, an introspective assessment of our service, right? But at this stage, I believe that we've got to get all hands on deck. And by so doing, we need to understand exactly what this job is about. And I don't think that it's a difficult job at all. It isn't a difficult task to do. We've all got to be conscientious and be prepared to do something for ourselves and for the nation. This is the reason why we have launched this campaign. And that's how we would like people to see it, that it is something that involves or concerns us all, not just a very few.
Thank you for that message, Dr. Peter Turay.
Yeah.
It's been a warm privilege and honor to interview you, and nevertheless to understand some of the key components regarding what you have for Sierra Leone and some of the key projects you're currently working on. Now, the company is Agrienviron. I will have all the information, the links um, that Dr. Peter Turay recently just talked about, some of the key stakeholders regarding, their plans for moving forward, what basis and where they're working in Sierra Leone as we speak. Now, we do understand that Sierra Leone is a nation that's located in West Africa, and not only does it have its beautiful people, but it's also its beautiful resources.
That's right.
I
Sierra
want to
Leone,
touch base on that as a whole, because as a fellow Sierra Leonean myself, it takes great pride and great honor just to see how much the country has grown. The new generation is coming up, and it's the reason why I have this platform as the next generation of business talk. It's to empower the next generation of young men and young women that are growing up currently as we speak, looking for a new beginning of this nation as a whole, but also looking for a new light regarding the future development. Now, I do understand that key components in the nation as a whole stem from with agriculture, stem from with development, and stem from with the government. Now, nevertheless, it's a key gesture in having to start a business in the country. And I want to take my hats out and congratulate Agrienviron, being a pioneer in sustainable growth in agriculture development in Sierra Leone. Nevertheless, I would love to have you back on the show sometime later in the future to ask some further questions regarding the progress report and also regarding how far you've moved on as a whole. Do you have any key components or any key last words you'd like to tell to the audience members, sir?
sure. First, I would like to start with a correction. It's Agrienviron. It's a mouthful, but it's Agrienviron. Yes, from the two stems of agriculture and the environment. So that's a merger, agri and environ from environment. So the full name is Agrienviron, agri, not agro, but Agrienviron, right? Yes, Sierra Leone lies on the West African coast, and it's part of the Guinea Gulf ecosystem. And we do play a very vital role. That area, in terms of global climate, is very, very sensitive. And our forests play a big role in that. Now, if we sit down and allow those forests to be deforested, we sit down and allow our ecosystem to be adversely affected by others just because of our selfish needs, the price we're going to pay is not going to be a small one at all. So why not come together now, as is espoused by my presentation, which won a semi-finalist position in a competition in 2019, organized by MIT, their collab. Why not come together as countries along this coast in the Guinea Gulf ecosystem to implement a program, which Ghana is now doing. I believe Nigeria is soon to start. Liberia also are almost there already. So why not join them as well, Sierra Leone, so that we could do something for ourselves and improve not just our own system, but make an impact in the world. That is a message that I'm passing on through this program, not just to Sierra Leoneans, but to friends of Sierra Leone as well. Thank you for granting us this privilege to do so.
Thank you for being a part of the show, and thank you so much for being a part of the Next Generation Business Talk. And I'm your host, Alpha Freeman. I want to thank Dr. Peter Turay for being an honorable guest on the show and sharing a light on Agrienviron.
Agrienviron. It's a mouthful, I said. Agrienviron, yes.
Saying that name over and over again, Agrienviron as a whole. Again, thank you so much. Best of luck with everything in your future endeavors, sir. And we're looking forward to having you in future presentations and future guest hosts. Again, thanks a lot.
You're welcome.